Welcome to another episode of Titan PI TV, where we're looking at the inside workings of a live operational investigation agency, that being here, Titan in Derby. Although we do have 10 offices from Truro down in the southwest all the way up to Manchester, which gives us that national reach. So following on from 2 weeks ago when we looked at how to identify a surveillance team, we had quite a few comments in regards to, so if I am a subject of a surveillance, what should my actions be? But before we get onto that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Simon Henson. I am the Managing Director of Titan Private Investigation Limited and your host this afternoon. Happy Friday. Don't forget, if you prefer to listen to podcasts, you can download Titan PI podcasts wherever you download your podcasts. So, just covering some of the points that we heard from 2 weeks ago on how to identify a surveillance team. The whole point of that episode was to highlight areas of complacency. So going in close and leaving your earpiece in, using your PTT or your press to talk button, so when you transmit on a radio in your right pocket, and always having your hand over the button in your right pocket. If you change your number plates, them not being on properly, it's a trigger. The cap which goes over the screw for your number plate, it'll work loose. Make sure you've got a new one and a tight one on, because that's a trigger. Think about your crewings on certain jobs, 2 males being double crewed. It's a trigger. So the whole point was to raise 8 points around complacency. But some people in the industry got the wrong idea of it and thought I was actually giving away tactics on how to identify a surveillance team. My words to you would be up your game, maybe listen to the podcast or watch it on YouTube, Titan PI TV, and take those points on board. Because then you won't be highlighted. You won't be seen by maybe not your subject, but the amount of times I have meetings daily, and I walk into somewhere like McDonald's, I mentioned this in the video, and I stumble across a surveillance team. They gain my attention, and I watch them, and they're just so sloppy. Whether you're working in the private industry or you're working for the government, up your game. It is human nature to become complacent, and those 8 points were purely around highlighting 8 complacent points which I see when I stumble across surveillance teams, not on a daily basis, but probably a monthly basis. So anyway, rant over. Just on that though, those that did comment from the industry, I'd like to thank you firstly for your engagement, but secondly, you've obviously triggered the algorithms for YouTube, because we've had over 5,000 views on that video. So thank you. So let's discuss what you should do if you believe you're a subject of a surveillance. You've got choices. First choice, you could challenge. You could challenge the surveillance team. So you've seen one of those complacent points on my last video, such as an earpiece. So your options are, firstly, you could challenge. I wouldn't advise this one, because it could be seen as potentially aggressive. Plus, you're showing that surveillance team that you're aware of their presence by challenging them. They will have a cover story if they're worth their salt, or a legend, so a reason to be there, and will obviously deny. But they will stand down. They will not continue that surveillance that day. They'll go back to the drawing board, and they'll come up with another method of surveilling you or gaining the objective which they've been deployed, hopefully a lawful objective, which they've been deployed to identify. So challenge. It's a choice, but I wouldn't do it. You could be a bit smart and you could perform anti-surveillance. We have done an episode on anti-surveillance, so feel free to watch that. So it might be that you take them down, or you force them down a choke point. So maybe an area where there's no near side or offside parallel, so all of them have got to come through that choke point with you. You could use reflections in the windows of a shop, for example, to try and identify how many are there, what they look like, get your trigger for the day on what they look like. You could get out of public area, and that would be my advice. Get out of the public area, regroup, and get your thoughts together on how you're going to play this one out. Give yourself some thinking time, somewhere where the surveillance operatives out of public can't go. Or your fourth option is potentially to go to the police, go to a police station, and potentially report it as harassment. But I've come up with a fifth point. And the fifth point was you could hire a private investigator, and that private investigator, do your research first, because there's many out there which are cowboys and girls. So do your research on whether they are in an institute or an association, whether they've got insurance, how long they've been around, what their background is, qualifications, etc. Are they registered on Companies House as a limited company? Do they change their name on Companies House regularly, or dissolve their companies? All red flags. So do due diligence on the company you choose, because there's loads out there, there's loads of competition. But what you could do is hire a private investigator to conduct counter surveillance. This, I would suggest, is the smartest move. Counter surveillance is where you employ a private investigator and their operatives to follow you at a distance, and they will be able to identify whether you're under surveillance. And if you are under surveillance and the surveillance operatives are identified, they will then become the subject of the investigation, and they will take them away to the vehicles, gain intelligence and evidence. They may even be able to house them, so find out where their home addresses are. And that then gives us points of research to be able to do further investigation to identify who's following you and why. So to recap, your options: challenge, which could be seen as aggressive; perform anti-surveillance, but you need to know what you're doing. If you do crude anti-surveillance, they will notice it, they will stand down and go back to the drawing board. You could get out of the public area and go private to regain your thoughts. You could go to the police, or the preferred option would be to employ a professional counter-surveillance team who will identify who's behind you. Let's be right though, you're not going to be followed unless there's a reason. So that's another episode of Titan PI TV in the bag. Don't forget you can download it wherever you download your podcast, Titan PI TV podcast. Please give us a thumbs up. We always like a thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss further episodes, then subscribe. It's free. So thanks for listening. Looking forward to your comments, engagement. If you've got any ideas on what you want us to cover, let us know. We're nearly at that 2,000 subscribers mark, and we thank you for that. Keep safe until next time.